Hello, everyone. My name is Professor Sungju Lee of KAIST School of Electrical Engineering, and with me, my TAs, Sujin Han and Yeon Kim are also here. And today we're very excited to welcome Dr. Lara Deek of Netflix as first of our career development interviews. She currently works at Netflix as a senior software engineer. Lara, can I ask you to kind of briefly introduce yourself?
Yeah, of course. So, hi, my name's Lara Deek. That's with the accent to it. But anyway, it's very nice to meet you. Thank you for having me. SJ is a mentor of mine back when he was a principal engineer at HP Research Labs, principal researcher. And yeah, so he invited me to do this, and I hope I give you something useful or beneficial for your careers. So, yeah.
All right, awesome. And how long have we known each other? Like 15 years or 10 years?
Oh my gosh, yeah, since at least 10 years, since 2011. That's when I did my internship. I should have gone my HP mug. I still have it.
And this is actually the first time you corrected how I pronounce your name.
I don't expect anyone to pronounce it. I mean, we call you SJ, it's Songju, right?
Right. Yeah. All right. So we collected a bunch of questions from the students from EE323. I added some of my questions. I know Sujin and Yeon added hers. I kind of want to walk through your career a little bit, but I mean, in all honesty, I don't think many people actually met people from Lebanon. It's not that easy. So can you tell us about, like, what was it like growing up in Lebanon, and how you got into engineering and all that kind of story that we like to know?
Yeah. So actually, this is a common story you'd hear, but because there was a civil war in Lebanon from 1975 to 1990, a lot of people immigrated out. So I was actually born in Greece, and then I went to school in Dubai, and then I moved back to Lebanon when I was 6 years old. And so in general, when you grow up in Lebanon, you get a lot of exposure to the Western world because parents are trying to give their kids sort of an opportunity outside of the country because there's so much instability. So there's a lot of schools with international programs. Like I did the IB program. It's International Baccalaureate for those that don't know it. It's a European program. Anyway, it's externally or internationally accredited. So there's a lot of focus in Lebanon on, how do we get you the education that can help you not only succeed locally, but succeed abroad, if you want that option. So yeah, it was very competitive. Yeah, it was competitive. It was sort of like, how do you set yourself up to succeed? And everyone's trying to set themselves up to succeed. Yeah.
So, right. So you grew up in a very academically competitive environment, and obviously you probably succeeded there, and you dreamt of moving on to the States. So how did you decide on, oh, I want to go to grad school. I want to go to grad school in the United States?
Yeah, I think it was. I mean, the US is top in the world when it comes to technology, and there are really good schools around engineering and computer science. And I felt that if I wanted to gain more knowledge or have a greater impact, because at the time I was sort of thinking about how do I have a greater impact, that I needed to have an education in the US. Come to school here, but also from the social perspective. And something I reflect on now oppositely, but at the time I wanted more independence. Well, Lebanon is a more patriarchal society. The US is, not that it's solved it, but it's a bit more open that way, or an acceptance of women and whatnot, or, not necessarily women, just underrepresented people. So it was a combination of, education as well as personal freedom. Luckily, they coexist in the US. So.
Okay, so far your story sounds very familiar to many Koreans.
That's why I was trying to, I know, which is why I'm trying to pitch it that way. Yeah.
And maybe that's why you resonate so much with Korean dramas.
It's true. Also the communal, the food, getting together
Hmm,
around food, or it's a very community oriented culture.
I
Everyone
see.
has an opinion. Well, that's in
Right.
Lebanon at least.
So you mentioned food. Like, have you tried Korean food?
Oh yeah.
What are some of your favorites?
Well, uh there's the pork belly, the stuff that comes in, you like put lettuce and
Yeah, yeah.
I don't want to
Possum.
butcher their names.
Is it possum?
Maybe
Like you have
posam.
pork, like you have this cabbage, you put some spicy stuff, that kind of like,
Mhm.
I mean, do you grill it or is it all all cooked?
Some of it's cooked and others are grilled. I also like sundubu. Sundubu is
Sundubu.
also one of the stuff I
I see.
like.
What's your spicy level of sundubu?
Well, I guess I have to go to Korea. Here they cater to foreigners. Hot is probably mild in Korea. I don't know, but I do
But
like spicy.
but it's red, right?
It's red. It's red.
Okay, okay.
You'll
So
be
okay,
proud.
we accept you then. We accept you. So cool. So you went to University of California, Santa Barbara, lovely campus, right by the ocean. I can see why many people want to go study there, but you chose to do research in computer networks. So, I mean, is that something you planned, before coming to Santa Barbara, or is it something you decided after? And how did you make that decision?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think getting into good schools is extremely competitive. So even setting yourself up to get into good schools starts when you're in undergrad. So I did undergraduate research. I applied for an
Mm,
internship program during my undergraduate in engineering. Um, I applied at UCSB mainly because we'd visited it at some point. We were doing a family trip, and it's a good school, and they had an internship program. So, and I applied to it, got accepted into it, and Kevin, who was one of my co-advisors at the time, um, he was one of the people that said, okay, I'll work with her, because I did put his name. And the reason why I got into networking is because it was sort of a growing field at the time, and that's something that attracted me. Now, different people are attracted by different things. It doesn't necessarily have to be the next hottest thing. It could be, um, some field that needs more attention, or that I think people should just follow their passions. To me, it was just networking because it was a new thing. It's easier to follow the new thing because at least you can think of the careers that you'd get around it. Financially, is it a more stable field to be in, etc. So um, I was lucky in the sense that I was attracted to a field that was new, but also where there's just a lot of money in that, in networking and tech, and it's
right.
a good field to be in for sure. Yeah.
So it was a balanced decision. You had to look for your future after your grad school, but it was also something you were interested in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right, right.
Um, but I think in a sense, like if I reflect back, there were many things I was interested in that I could have also went into. Um, so, I do think that people shouldn't, should make their decisions based on the information they know, and move forward and sort of not look back and regret it. In my opinion, I guess the questions you'll ask me, I'll tell you how I redirected based on good or bad decisions I made. Um, but I was lucky that networking also was an attractive field that is still an attractive field today.
Mhm.
Um, but I did pivot at some point, and I guess maybe you'll get to
Right,
that
right,
question.
right. We'll
Yeah,
get to that.
yeah.
Now, I mean, now that you're having a, stellar career, when you're looking back, was going to grad school something that really helped you? And if so, like, what kind of skill sets that, get you prepared to go to the industry?
I think, in academia, I feel you're a bit sheltered. Well, I'll start with I should guess shortcomings of grad school, and then I'll end with a good note about the good things. But one of the shortcomings is you can work on your own. you collaborate some, but it's not the same degree that you have to in industry. If you don't like someone in academia, you don't really have to work with them. But in industry, you have to work with them and you have to keep a good rapport with them. So it's something I actually, if I look back at how I was and now, I would say that's the biggest improvement is being comfortable and relaxed around people that you don't really agree with, or, so, and to succeed around that. Now, obviously there are cases where you can't, in which case, I won't get into that, but I would suggest like either changing your role or changing your manager. People make a big difference around you. But that was one shortcoming of academia. But one good thing is in industry, you're given the area that you work in. It's less open-ended. But in academia, you need to find yourself, you need to find that world that you want to, do research in, or that you want to operate in. So I think it's getting used to working with uncertainty and finding and navigating your way, like, what's useful information, how to deal with too much information, because sometimes when you don't know what you need to know, it feels like, oh my God, I need to know everything. And that's why starting is the hardest part. And seriously, everyone that wants to start anything, I would suggest just go for it, because it's always going to be hard. And you're actually doing yourself a favor by just running through that wall and just getting rid of, or, anyway. The reason I'm passionate about giving advice is because I wouldn't have seen myself at the time in the position that I'm at today. And I think people are usually, wait, I'm going into like advice at this point, but back to the, I'll go back to the grad school. I think those are the skills it teaches you, is to be an expert at a field you don't know much at. To be able to work with obscurity. I think if you worked in industry, you're not comfortable with that, or very few people are. So that's the benefit of going to grad school. The other thing is grad school helps you, and this is advice I give, is take courses that build your core skills. And I'm talking like math, programming, things that you would only learn through courses and by like really grilling yourself, theoretical stuff, because that really sets you up later.
Right. So basically, not chasing high GPAs, but the courses that will help you develop your skills, like this networking course that gives you hand-on system building experience, right?
Absolutely. Yes. I think, don't worry about the GPA, because I mean, it's important, of course, but just build those core skills, get some experience in industry. I think, what was the point I was going to make? I mean, don't try to, I guess, rush through it. Give yourself time to learn all this stuff and invest in that. Yeah.
So you mentioned about Kevin Almaroth, who was one of your advisor. Actually, Kevin, I knew Kevin because his paper when he was a PhD student was one of the first papers I read. Then he went to Santa Barbara, and then my friend who I met at an internship, Elizabeth, also joined Santa Barbara. So three of us were, cooking up some ideas to collaborate. And we want a fund, and the fund says, okay, you guys need to work with a student. And I don't know if it's a requirement, but it was strong guidelines. It has to be a female student as part of developing, underrepresented people. And Kevin says, oh, awesome, because I have a great student already. And that's how you and I start working together. So Lara came to HP. You spent what, like 3 months? Was it 6 months? Or how long did you spend there?
I don't remember, SJ. I think
it
seems longer than 3 months.
We're both getting old. We can't remember things. One of the student question was, were there any funny episode involving SJ?
Oh my gosh, yes. This one I will remember for the rest of my life. And it's
Oh
one of the
no.
reasons I really think highly of SJ. They're the funny ones, but I'll tell you the one that makes you think highly of him. We'll leave the dirt for, I guess, for alcohol times. But
Yeah, soldiers.
um, yeah, and I think so. There was this one time I was working, and then SJ comes to, there's like a shared cubicle with all interns, and he comes in and he looks really angry. I'm like, what's up with SJ? He's really angry. He's like, Lara, I need to talk to you. And I knew it wasn't about me. So he goes to he took me to like this conference room. And at some point, Sujata joined us, another female researcher.
My
But
manager. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And SJ is like, these, so I had an incident. Should I mention this?
Yeah, I mean, maybe not the country, but yeah, somewhere in some country from Europe, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I wasn't going to mention that. No, you
Okay,
did.
okay. No, actually, I was going to ask you about like difficulties of being women in
Mm,
engineering, but I think this is a, yeah. If this is a story that I'm thinking about, yeah.
it is. It is.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, SG always felt like a, a fun mentor than a traditional teacher. So in that sense, felt very comfortable around SJ. Very comfortable. Like
Traditional teacher.
he's
Yeah.
like, um, anyway, I'm thinking of the word, but maybe I shouldn't. I don't know what exactly means in Korean. But anyway, so so there were these two contractors essentially. It's funny when you're a female, you kind of get used to certain behavior towards you, and at the moment you don't know how to react. You think you would react in a way where you'd push them away and say, you need to stop doing what you're doing. But when you're in a work environment, it all feels too much, and then you sort of sweep it under the rug, right? But at the time, I remember SJ was like, this is unacceptable, what the contractors did. Basically, they came to my cubicle and tried to flirt with me, which was very odd. Any case, and then what found out is another intern was there, and he saw it, and he let you know or something like that. Yeah. But I remember you were sort of furious and you didn't have it, and then I think they were gone after that, right?
Yeah, yeah, they got fired.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I mean, the way I found out, like you mentioned, uh, another intern who was sharing the large cube with you, a male student, he saw it, and he didn't actually report it to me. He was kind of mentioning it like some funny episode, and that's how I actually had a separate meeting with him as well. Right, this ain't funny. This is violating ethics in a work environment. But I also, had to talk to you to make sure you're okay with it. You're not okay with it, but you're fine. What exactly happened? And obviously, Sujata was my manager, so she was going to take care of all the administrative issues. But we want to make sure that you feel okay and safe in the work environment. Yeah, so it was very upsetting, but I was also very upset that nobody actually reported it. And when we actually talked to you, you were like, come on, I grew up in Lebanon. This happened all the time.
Yeah.
So, but it
Yeah.
was like, hey, this is I don't I can't let this work environment be like that.
Mm.
Yeah. So yeah.
And that
So
was you were basically, I think, a role model in that situation, SJ. I think now being in industry, I would only pick a boss, or I'd only work for someone who is of that mindset, because it makes a whole lot of difference. Yeah.
right.
So there should be, yeah.
Okay. So yeah, not exactly a funny episode, but maybe we'll talk a little bit more about. I was going to ask you in the end, but like you must have had other incidents where because you're a female,
Mhm.
because engineering and maybe especially maybe in the backend systems, I think there are fewer women, way fewer women than men. I mean, and there must have been a lot of incidents where you felt gender inequality, unfairness. I mean, how often do you go through this kind of experience? How do you overcome it? I mean, we have some female students in the class as well, and also the TAs. I mean, do you have some advice for them?
Mm, yeah, I think for all those female students, I sort of, my heart's with you. I really, just um, just believe that uh, it's whatever situation, it's not okay and it's not your fault. Some of the situations I had is, let's say, not being taken seriously, or I make a point and then the male colleague makes the same point, but they're like, oh, that's a good point. I'm like, I just made that point. But I think that's why I mentioned it's important to work for a boss like SJ, or someone who understands what these biases are, and can educate people that work for him or around him about what kind of behavior should not be taken for granted, or this is actually not okay, because different people come from different cultures. Certain things are okay, doesn't mean they're bad people, it's just they just don't realize. So I think for your own sake, assume they don't come from a bad place. Some are jerks, but for your own sake, so you don't kill yourself or just like die inside all the time, assume they don't come from a bad place. And I don't know if this is actually good advice, because sometimes um, I think one of the benefits I had is I work in Netflix, where feedback is very encouraged. And so if you feel that someone is behaving in a certain way, you could say, you shouldn't call them sexist off the bat, because that like makes them defensive. You would say, in this situation, I feel I made the same point, but you don't listen to me. Is there a way that I can better deliver my message so that it can be heard? Because I've noticed this is a pattern. Mm. In that case, they'll realize like, oh, I'm actually not listening to this person. But the way you're positioning yourself is, I want to learn more how to be heard, right? Mm. So then they feel less defensive and they're more, able to work with you. So it's unfortunately burdenous, but
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually a very intelligent way of handling things, right? Because you're trying to make a point, but you also want to make sure the other person don't get all defensive, right? So I think that's a very smart way of doing it.
Yeah, I think, yeah, and also before, yeah, other than it's smart, it's better for you. Mm. Because you don't get angry, and it's just a calmer way to, yeah. Mm. So.
Okay. All right.
What'd you say?
Yeah, there was maybe, I don't know, maybe it's heavy is the right word, but it was definitely a very important piece of advice. I'm going to get back to your career. So you get your PhD, you actually publish a few good papers. Then you decide to actually do a postdoc, right? So what was the motivation behind it, and what happened, and obviously we'll talk a little bit more about after your postdoc you actually decided to go to the industry. So what led you to that decision, and maybe that was the pivot that you were referring to.
Yeah. So the pivot is, in grad school, I kind of focused on wireless networking, but the job opportunities for wireless are, Qualcomm, Google Fi, I think at the time that was a thing, HP, but I sort of wanted to expand. Not that I wanted to apply to industry, but the point was that there were other fields that were gaining more traction and that were more in demand that was not wireless. So that's actually why I did the postdoc. I realized sort of machine learning and AI, I know it's sort of a buzzword now, but it's important to, I think, build those kind of muscles, or just be aware. That said, I'm not very familiar with BitCurrency, but I'm just not going there. But there's some things, I want to learn more about, and machine learning was one of them. So that's why I did postdoc. And at the time, I guess I wasn't sure I wanted to go to academia, but also the positions were limited in academia for the emphasis I was in. So I think one advice I'd give is in grad school, work, ask your professor, what are the, other than what their emphasis is, like, is there research that I could, get into that can, or, some directions I can get into that could help my future career, etc. But in any case, I was very wireless. That was my issue. So I did the postdoc, and at that point, I realized even if I'd published more, the funding, the academic funding, I know one of the students had, that question. Academic funding is very low right now. So being a professor is harder to get funded. You don't get to pick the locations you're in. So for me, it was going to have a lifestyle impact. And you get paid much, much less, like ridiculously, especially if you're in tech. So that's when I pivoted away from academia, and I decided to do industry. And it was hard. I think every time you change your direction, it's hard, but it was the most important, and it's always a good decision to repivot. Like, don't stick on a bad path, just change. It's okay if you go to somewhere new. So I studied for industry jobs. You have to study algorithms, like cracking the coding interview. There are a bunch of books online. Yeah, so I basically studied for a month. I had a friend of mine, and now I'm giving sort of job interview suggestions.
This is good, yeah.
Yeah, I had a friend of mine, and this is very important. I think to set yourself up for success in a job interview, you need to recreate a job interview environment. You need to get used to it and need to get comfortable with it, so that, when you're in the interview, stress and nerves don't make don't destroy your chances. So I had a friend who I asked him, give me questions, we'll set a timer, and then I'll have to answer them on the board, and we need to behave like you're interviewing me, right? And I searched online, I worked really hard for an entire month trying to repivot. And that's what I'd suggest you do, get buddies who you could, work on this together, solve problems, get really hands-on. Different companies have different positions open. So even as a grad student, companies like Netflix, for example, most of their job openings require some industry experience, if not a lot. They don't have entry level. Entry level means, straight out of undergrad or some level even of just grad school, because academic skills and technical are different. But at the time, I was lucky that Netflix had an opening that required sort of a analytical experience, and that's how I got in. But that said, you'll always find those kind of jobs in different companies. But yeah, I think, yeah, throughout, so yeah, that's the pivot I did that was the hardest. I decided to move away from academia and to industry, and I don't regret it at all. I still do, yeah. I'll let you ask away.
Yeah, so, I mean, there must have been many tech companies, right? And I'm guessing you wanted to come back to the Bay Area, including the company that you're having your mug. So what led you to actually pick Netflix?
Yeah, the part of, so this is another thing that's important. It's, if you have the luxury, I think people apply to jobs and they want the perfect job, but sometimes your options are limited and you pick the best one. And as adults, no decision is the final one. You could always change jobs in the future. Now you have an experience on your resume, etc. But at the time, the reason I picked Netflix, and I was lucky to have Netflix, is One, the way they interviewed me was very respectful. It was the best out of all of them. They do pay top of market. That was sort of the cherry on top, but really what it was is the kind of work that I was going to do and the culture. I love the Netflix culture, which is, you know, context, not control, meaning, you know, people operate as, you know, it's a flat organization generally. Like you don't have your manager tells you what to do, you know, you kind of decide on your own. So in that sense, it recreated the environment to some extent that I was used to in academia. And that I liked. That said, I do realize most people picture or paint the you know, innovative direction as the best kind of field you can be in. I don't think so. I think you should do what makes you happy. For me, it was doing my own thing, I guess. Yeah.
So it seems like they give you a lot of freedom, but they also expect professionalism, right? Because you need to know what to do and you have to deliver. So maybe that's why they don't have those entry level. They want professionals, right?
Yeah, that first year, oh my God. Yeah, it was very hard. You know, there was no work-life balance, essentially. It was a lot of work. And that's another thing that I would advise people like, or young folks is, once you have an opportunity, like you owe it to yourself to do the best that you can and try to think long term. 1 year from now, I'll be proud of myself and happy that I did the best that I could when I got this opportunity. There's that imposter syndrome, but in a sense, it was justified because a lot of the people around me had a lot of years of experience. But, you know, I pushed through, and I think people around you recognize that, especially if you're delivering and you're learning quickly. So yeah, so that first year was hard, but yeah, but you know, I'm proud of myself now. So I didn't know I'd be here again. Just do the best you can. You won't regret it. Yeah.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about Netflix. I think the question everybody wants to know is that do you get free membership?
Everyone asks me that. So no, I do not.
Right. Let's talk a little bit about the lifestyle. Like, I mean, we see your house in the background, and we thank you again for spending your Sunday evening with us.
My
So
pleasure.
you live in San Francisco,
Mm.
right? But Netflix, if I remember correctly, is in Los Gatos, a little bit south, one of the very highly educationally competitive neighborhood. So it must be, is it maybe hour and a half drive? Like, how do you commute? What time do you commute? And how does Netflix help you with it?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first 3 years I worked for Netflix, I always wanted to live in San Francisco, but when I first joined Netflix, they didn't have a shuttle. So I actually lived close to work. I lived like 10 minutes drive away. But 3 years later, they wanted to support people working further away. So they have a shuttle service now. And it's, you know, 1 hour. If you go, so at 7:15 a.m. is the shuttle. That's my stop.
So
And
what time
it's
do you have
one
to get
hour
up?
drive. Hmm?
So what time do you get up?
Oh man, 6 a.m.
All
But
right.
see, that's what I did pre-COVID. I don't know if I can still do it now. I do it like once or twice a week, but I'm 3 years older. It's insane how long this thing took. And I know in Korea now it's sort of
Yeah, COVID's
still,
bad,
yeah, hopefully it
but I
will.
think 6 in the morning thing probably sounds very unfamiliar to most students, I think. Yeah. That's probably when they go to bed.
They're smiling. Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean,
Yeah.
so yeah, as a
So you take
student,
it.
yeah.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. So you take the shuttle at 7:15 and probably so you get to the office by probably like 8:30-ish.
Mhm. Yeah,
And
8:30-ish.
yeah.
Yeah.
And what time's the shuttle back?
It's at 4:15 on weekdays, 3:15 on Fridays.
Okay. And they must have Wi-Fi in the shuttle so you can still write code.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
And how much time at home do you actually work?
It depends. I think I work through the shuttle, and yeah, I think these days, the last 2 years, there's been more of a work-life balance. So I work at work and during the shuttle, but then when I come home, I sort of, so here's the thing, I can be efficient at work because I turn off after work. I think running on fumes or just, pushing yourself when you're not efficient is bad, is really bad. Like you're actually doing yourself a disfavor. And I know people feel guilty when they take time off, but you shouldn't feel guilty when you take time off, because that's how you get the better ideas, because you need to switch context or just shut off to come with a fresh mind. So when I get to work, I work out. I think physical health is very important. Or just walk, yeah, I don't know, but I think having, seeing friends, I think having something outside of work is important for an individual's happiness.
Right. But you're saying, but when you're working, you're entirely focused on it. So
Yeah,
you're
I'm
very
pretty
efficient.
efficient. Yeah.
You don't go watch Netflix or go on social media or anything. Right.
No, I'm not the social media generation. Well, actually I am, but anyway, I don't do it.
Yeah. So Sujin is actually very interested in systems. So I think she had some questions for you. Maybe Sujin, you want to ask her yourself?
Yeah. I'm very interested in a career in backend system, and I wanted to ask what kind of a job a backend engineer typically does to manage her system, because I know I learned that the Open Connect is a very large scale system, and I wanted to know what kind of jobs that go with maintaining such a system. Like, is most of the job focused on improving the performance, or is most of the job focused on just maintaining the current form? That was my question.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think so in any job, there's a balance between, maintaining things, or, part of, maintaining things and then building new things. So we're constantly building new things, but we also accumulate this list of things that we either need to maintain or that we need to upgrade to an improved system. Because the thing about technology, there are always new improvements, or new systems that you need to, or that you should adopt. So we always maintain by updating, but also by making sure that, so let's say at Netflix we have an increase in subscriber growth. That means that our systems need to be able to scale to handle more traffic or more requests. So that goes part of maintenance, and we call it technical debt. And then depending on the company that you're at, the new services that you build is either small or it's large. It just depends on how mature the company is, and I guess how mature the company is. Or that changes though if they try to get into new things. For example, now we're getting into mobile games and whatnot, so that's a new thing. So it's always a balance between the two. And I think if you having someone you work for that you're comfortable with, that you're comfortable talking about what your growth trajectory is, what excites you at work, what the load distribution across members of your team are, and then based on that, decide what you need to work on when. So sometimes I do technical debt, and that means sort of how do you make sure a system is stable, that there's good monitoring, there's good logging, there's good alerting, so that if something goes wrong, it's easier to diagnose and correct for it. Two, I also do a lot of build new services. for example, so I do a lot of the, file placement, deployment. It's a lot around, predicting popularity, but also around, building resource efficient algorithms. Like, how do you deploy files that have different demands for traffic on different servers that have different hardware capabilities? So, if one file attracts a lot of traffic and one file attracts very little, and you have millions of those, how do you deploy them in such a way where, let's say, two servers can maximally serve that traffic without saturating on, let's say, one hardware piece, that sort of thing. So I guess as a backend engineer, there are many things you could do. Our team is, does distributed systems related stuff around for all the files that are deployed on all servers. How do we maintain a picture of what files are deployed where? So that's the distributed systems part. We also have, proxy blocking. How do you decide if this user is on a proxy and accordingly block them? That's another new thing you'd build, right? At some point, whatever. I almost got into, anyway, then there's a popularity, new machine learning algorithms. At what level do you predict popularity? At the file level or at the title level, right? Because a title has, small bit rates for mobile devices, big bit rates for 4K TV. So I guess what I'm saying is, as a backend engineer or any engineer, there's always a balance between new and maintaining. And you need to talk to your manager. It's expected that your manager should talk to you about what you want to work on too, and what your growth is. Yeah.
I think, throughout the interview, one thing I'm sensing that probably many Korean students don't realize is that you said you picked Netflix because they were the most respectful to you during the interview, right? And I keep mentioning student interview is, both ways, right? They're evaluating you, but you should also evaluate the company. But, when you also have a job, you need to have the relationship, you need to manage above and below as well. And you want your growth, right? If you can get growth opportunities in a great company, you don't have to switch companies for the sake of switching, right? How's the company growing? How is it help me grow? And you need to have a career path, your plans, and if it can satisfy you, I mean, that's, and also paying you well and all that, there's no reason to leave. But some people might want to have entrepreneurship experience, then you could also go work for a startup and start a company. But it depends on like what makes you happy. That's what you mentioned, right? What you need to know what makes you happy, and you need to seek those jobs that, that could make you happy.
Absolutely. Yeah. And don't
Right.
cruise. Yeah, exactly. I love what you
Right.
said, SJ. Like, don't, be aware of what you like, ask yourself. I always ask myself, and I even, was honest with myself. What am I good at? What am I bad at?
Right.
But also we're bad at a lot of things when we first start. So also have confidence that
Yeah.
if you like something that you could get better. But it's important to not just be unhappy. Just don't be afraid to ask,
Right. This actually reminds me, when I was at HP, I actually had many managers. One of them was Paul Congdon. He was a CTO of HP Networks. Then he joined the labs, and he said, hey, I have a lot of experience. I have many connections. I can help you, but I cannot help anybody who doesn't know what he or she wants. If you know what you want, I can try to help you. If you haven't figured that out, I can't, right? So you need to know what you want.
Absolutely. Oh, the other thing, SJ,
Yeah.
keep people around you that want your success and can
Right.
also fact check you. That's been invaluable to me.
So people who tells you what you need to hear, not necessarily what you want to hear.
Exactly.
Right.
And check in with them, like, I'm set with my career. Sometimes if you're stuck, people around you help you figure out what's the next step, or if you're being emotional about some things, or if you need to take a break, or what advice. Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, what you describe about your work actually takes care of one of the other questions, because one student asked, I mean, do you get bored because the solution to the problems are basically repetition of what works? But I guess this depends on the company, right? Companies like a very successful company like Netflix, they not only bring in innovations into maintaining their currently working system, but they're always looking for what can we do, something new that will bring new customers. So there'll always be new skills you have to learn. And that's part of the growth that you're talking about,
Mhm.
right? So I don't think they're going to make you bored at Netflix at all, sounds like.
We thought we were, yeah, anyway, no.
Yeah. But then another question the student asked was, so how do you adapt to the fast changing industry? There's like new skill sets coming out very quickly. Once you learn, there's another thing you need to learn. So how do you catch up with all this stuff?
I mean, everybody is trying to catch up, right?
Yeah.
So, keep that in mind, and just like one thing at a time. You don't need to know everything. But, usually in a company, they give you something to do. You should be able to do it. Just, focus on learning what you have, or maybe in your extra time. I actually took courses at Stanford. Not necessarily that they had to be Stanford. I could have taken Coursera, but this one was like graded with homeworks. It was the only way I was going to take the course. Otherwise I'd get lazy.
What was this course?
It's they're actually machine learning courses.
Mm-hmm.
It's CS 229, 230, and
Wow.
it's a third one on graphical neural networks. So that's a new area too, and I was curious about it. But that's part of like a professional development program. And some companies support your professional development, so they would financially support you learning. Yeah. So yeah, just one thing at a time. Yeah.
Yeah. So I know you're still young. I think your best days are still ahead of you. So, I mean, what do you have in plan? What's next? Do you have some concrete plans of what you want to do or where you want to do it? Maybe another pivot, who knows?
That is a good question. I do not know. But I will give myself time to figure it out, I think.
Yeah. So you've been in Netflix for like 7 years now, right?
Yeah, since 2015.
Yeah. Because I know, because that's when I came to KAIST the same year.
Oh, that's true. 2017 is when you did, right?
2015 was.
2015.
Yeah. Yes.
Oh, that is true. I do remember us or me emailing you or something, and then you said you joined. I don't remember, but
yeah.
That's true.
We met up at Infocom in San Francisco with Ricardo.
With Ricardo, yeah.
Yeah. Who's also going to give an interview, maybe in a couple months.
Oh, I should watch his interview.
Yes. So KAIST has a few international students, and one of the international students wanted to ask you, do you plan to return to Lebanon, and do you miss your home country?
I mean,
yeah,
that one
family
is
still there. You still have your family?
Yeah, my parents are still there. My extended family is still there. I definitely. So I'll try to answer in a way that is most helpful to most people. When you travel abroad, I think you become more of a global citizen. Like you're not, I'm not fully Lebanese, but I'm also not fully American. And that's, it just is. I'm a lucky person, I guess, that gets to experience both cultures. So that said, some people might wonder, if I go back home, am I going to be able to operate the way I used to? And if the answer is yes, then, and you want to go home to be close to family, you should do it. I think family and the people around you are where happiness is. ultimately. I don't think any of us have the answer to happiness, but I think the people around us, it's through our relationships with them. But for those that, for me, for example, I can't, but that's why I was saying like more general. But for those that can't, because I know, I don't know if they're talking about current events, you know, for those that can go back to their country, I think it sucks, but you know, I don't, to be honest, have an answer to that. But I think finding time to go see your family as often as you can and connect with them is probably the alternative to moving back there. This is what I'm trying to do, actually.
I mean, I was in the same boat, right? And I think as you grow in age and your situation changes too, right? Could depend on. I mean, first of all, I was lucky where Korea is very advanced in technology, like Samsung and all those companies. Then also, we have some great universities where you can still have international visibility. But my parents were getting old. Then I married and, we wanted our kids to grow up closer to their grandparents. My brother used to live in Korea. He moved back to the US. So many things, right? Then became a family decision as well, right? So I think, you don't know what's going to happen, right? Things change. And sometimes, it's not just a career decision. And like I said, if the situation, if you're lucky enough, they're going back to your home country and can still satisfy your career ambition while also, satisfying your family commitment as well, then things might change. So, yeah. So I don't think, there will never be a generalized answer to this, I guess.
I'm glad you contributed to this one, SJ. I was thinking in my head while I'm saying this, I'm like, you're a perfect example of, you have the perfect answer to this question.
Right. Because when I was working with you, I don't know if I ever told you, I said, I'm never going back to Korea. Like I would never. Why would I do that kind of thing?
Really?
Yeah. I never thought I would come back. I never thought that. But things change. Yeah.
I was really surprised actually when you moved to Korea.
Yeah. Actually, my friends in Korea were more surprised that KAIST actually hired me, but that's a different story.
Okay, for another day. I want to hear this one.
But I mean, but what attracted me was a lot of good professors and researchers in my area were all going back to KAIST. So I could say, hey, if they're going back, first of all, I could work with them and they're top-notch people. It means, like I said, you don't have to sacrifice your international ambition, right? It's not like I can't publish anymore because KAIST has top students like these two that are with me. So yeah, I mean, so things change because I don't know if we could have said the same thing about Korea like 10, 15 years ago, right? Because Korea has grew rapidly in the tech area, especially with the smartphones, right? So mobile. So
it has. When is that flappy phone I see on K-pop coming to? Do you find that?
Ask my students. You need to ask my students. They're more into that.
I probably will.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we're almost in an hour. Yewan, did you have any question for Lara?
Oh yeah, I have one. I think I should have asked it earlier, but yeah, you said during the interview you told us that you try to find what you really want and what you really try hard to figure out yourself. But nowadays, like including me, students' lives are filled with social media. So I think they don't have like time to actually think about themselves and like figure out what they really want. So I wonder, what do you find, like what are the things that you find most useful to like figuring out like what do you really want, like for example writing a diary or reading books?
I love that. That is a really deep question. Let me It's a beautiful question. Okay, let me. I think it's. I think, you know, at some point to the writing diaries. I think sometimes we get caught up in daily life that organizing our thoughts is very important, and writing a diary every day is very beneficial. And I think at some point I was going through a rough time, you know, this was back when COVID started and sort of the explosion in Lebanon happened. It was like too much to, and one of the things that really did great for me is to write every day 3 things that you're grateful for, practicing gratitude. And they say that getting through hard times or resilience, the foundation of that is gratitude. And so I guess, how do I figure out what I want? Sometimes I just don't know, but I go with whatever I feel is right. But it's important later to not regret that decision, because you need to trust that you made the decision with as much as you knew. And sometimes you say, you know, I could have tried harder. I could have, you know, researched harder, but yeah, we're all imperfect, and that's okay. And, you know, as adults, we can always make better decisions, or make, you know, any decision. Making any decision is good. Because some people get stuck in decision, what is it called? When you can't make a decision. Anyway.
Indecision.
Indecision, yeah. But I think not getting caught up in society, and I think what society thinks, and social media, it's toxic. It's just, even staring at the phone, I don't think it's healthy all the time. So really, I really encourage everyone to focus on themselves, their happiness, not social media. Really don't give a shit about what people think, really. I mean, I couldn't stress that enough. You know, love the people that it matters to love, respect the people that it matters to respect, and the rest of them, can I fuck them? You know,
Yeah.
just, it doesn't matter. Really, you will never regret that. You will never regret that. You actually would regret not saying fuck off as much as you should have. But that said, you know, don't have hate for people that you should tell fuck off. Just, you know,
just ignore them, right?
Just ignore them, because otherwise it's bad for you. So
they're not worth your time.
So yeah, I mean, I think everyone's doing their best, and whatever's you're doing is great. You know, just be happy. Yeah. And, you know, work towards your success. Keep the long-term vision in mind. So yeah.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, hopefully that answered, but.
All right, awesome. Lara, I want to thank you again. And throughout the interview, like, you know, I could see firsthand you've grown into a top professional, and I'm extremely proud to know you and call you a friend. I'm extremely proud.
Ditto, SJ. Thank you.
Very
It's my
grateful.
pleasure.
Yeah, you will spend time to talk to us and give feedback to a lot of students. I mean, we're thinking about opening up, as I mentioned, email, not just to the core students, but, you know, we'll probably post it on, you know, after your approval, our lab's YouTube page, because I think any student would benefit from watching this interview.
Yeah, I hope they do. And
Yeah.
maybe I can answer questions and comments. I don't know.
All right. Thank you
All right.
very much. Yes. Enjoy your evening. And yes, we'll
and
be
enjoy
in
your
touch.
day. Yeah, we will.
Yes. All right. Take care. 잘 부탁합니다.
You should have the right thing to answer. How do you say bye?
You just say 안녕히 계세요.
안녕히
Yeah.
계세요. 안녕히
Yeah.
계세요. That's what I thought. You say hello and bye. It's like ciao, right?
So 안녕하세요 is when we say hello. 안녕하세요.
Oh, 안녕하세요. That's
Yeah,
true.
yeah. When you say
네.
goodbye, it's like it depends on like if you're leaving, then you tell the one who's gonna be there to 안녕히 계세요.
안녕히
Now,
계세요.
if you're the host, if you're going away, you tell them 안녕히 가세요.
안녕 가세요. Oh, ka means
Yeah.
good. Go.
But,
Oh, okay.
yeah, ga means go. But since we're all online, we can just say 안녕히 계세요.
안녕 계세요.
Yeah.
네.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much. All right.
감사합니다.
Thank you, Lara.
See you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.